be discussed and presented to you today. While in addition to that, you will get to learn unique aspects of additional work culture differences in the virtual environment. And I will share some advices on how to make this remote office mode work for you. So I'm hoping this webinar is of some help to you if you're new to Canada and are looking for local job opportunities. So before getting started, I just wanted to spend a few minutes to introduce myself first. My name is Lillian Dom, and I'm a senior manager of KPMG Canada based in Toronto. I have been in the public accounting sector for the past 10 years, during which I advised business owners, VP of finance and tax, and the controllers of public accounting firms and medium-sized companies across industries and regions on matters about tax compliance, consulting, and accounting. I'm currently a chartered accountant of CPA Canada and a certified public accountant of state of Massachusetts. I was originally born and raised in Shanghai. I went to school in the States in my early age, and I was in Boston at the time. And that was the first time I felt so overwhelmed by the variety of cultures and people that around me. A few years ago, my family moved to Canada, and yes, I finally landed here, Toronto, the most diverse and popular city in Canada, with a population of approximately 7 million people. So to me, it's a quite big move, and the culture shock, as you know, is inevitable. All right, these are some little facts about myself. So with that, I will go ahead and kick off today's session. And on this page, you are going to see the agenda items for today. I will work through an overview of the Canadian cultural basics first, and then we will discuss why and how culture has influenced so much on new immigrants. And afterwards, you will hear some specifics of cultural change in the new normal, and followed by some practical advice and tips to you. Throughout Canada's history, we know it's culturally has been influenced pretty much by both the European and American culture, and as well as some Indigenous culture as well. Over time, culture of Canada's immigrant populations have become incorporated to form a Canadian cultural mosaic. The total population of Canada nowadays is about 37 million, and approximately 20% of the Canadians were born elsewhere in the world. There are currently more than 250 ethnic origins reported across Canada. Although we only have 2 official languages, in fact, there are more than 200 different languages are spoken across Canada. If you are new to Canada, the following statistics would really sound pretty astonishing to you. City of Toronto, as an example, it has turned into one of the most ethnically diverse cities in the world due to immigration. Just under half of the Torontonians are now immigrants, and approximately 53% of the residents in the city belong to a visible minority group. In my view, and based on my observation of colleagues around me, Canadians are generally very polite and respectful, especially at workplace. They are very focusing on making literal about time and schedule. So Canadian workplace culture expects you to be good at speaking, listening, socializing with other people, and to know the etiquette of working harmoniously with coworker and a supervisor. And of course, to understand a good range of cultural differences in the workplace. So how culture plays a role in the workplace and why it matters to new immigrants. Many newcomers believe they are overlooked in the job markets because they lack certain hard skills, while sometimes surprisingly, this may not be the case. Recent labor market research shows people who are highly skilled at verbal communications are more likely to be hired. I'm also a believer that your skill sets qualifications generally will bring you to an interview, but you definitely need a soft skills, which means some good personality, a like mindset, a strong communication in order to get a job. So both soft and hard skills to me are equally important. In some countries, for certain industries, technical skills or knowledge are way more heavily weighted than other. While perhaps it may not be the case in most situations in Canada. Some of my mentees, and of course, those are from different backgrounds, came to me and asked two big questions. First of all, they wanted to know how they would be able to leave a good impression in an interview. And the second biggest question they always ask is how they can keep that job and being successful. I'm certain you may have other questions on your mind too. And in my view, the key to answering these questions are fundamentally tied back to a person's cultural awareness and his or her adaptability to a new environment. I just wanted to emphasize that it is always true that people act in expected ways in a new workplace environment. They are more likely to develop credibility, trust, respect from people around them, and vice versa. Inappropriate or unexpected behaviors or expressions can be sometimes misunderstood and negatively affect how you are perceived. So I summarized a few key interview tips, which I personally found pretty useful, especially in the virtual environment. So first of all, on these slides is the qualification. You need certain qualification to do a job. If you're looking for accounting jobs in Canada, in my example, you will need to be a CPA, which is a certified or chartered public accountant, or at least pursuing a CPA designation. This is the reality, so we need to accept it. Using accounting job as an example, assuming you're an internationally trained CPA like me and who are eager to gain Canadian work experiences, what do you need to have, in my opinion, is really three big things. You need to demonstrate your competency in accounting technology, technical knowledge, and be academically strong. You are suggested to indicate your GPA and your highest score for major courses on your resume. And if you assume any accounting, finance related volunteer roles, making sure you highlight them all on your CV. Because interviewers are willing to see candidates who are taking charge of their own career and who are more proactive than others to find a way to create space for him or herself, even in an early stage of their professional career. So the second big things on my list is having relevant working experiences. This is definitely value added. For newcomers who already have accounting firm experiences, your hurdle to cross to get a similar job here in Canada is way more lower. A similar prior experiences in big-sized or nationwide accounting firms may give an interviewer an impression that this candidate has more similarities with its own employees and other people. And HR and your hiring director boss will not worry that you won't fit into their organization. In my example, the role I got interviewed with KPMG required a strong understanding of IFRS accounting standards and some tax accounting knowledge. And in other words, other highly potential candidates should have similar experiences in auditing financial statements and are quite familiar with all accounting standards and principles. So for the audience today, I would just suggest you think a little bit deep on the similarity of the new job you are going to apply versus the current and old position you held. Do your own research on the hiring company itself, the company's culture, the position itself, and then get yourself well prepared for that interview is also very important. And last but not least, as I said earlier, designation. CPA designation for an accountant is also a game changer. To anyone who are interested in applying a Big Four company position, 90% of the resume we're receiving are all those CPAs. So if you passed the CPA exam and are not yet decided if you should apply for a designation with relevant public accounting board, I highly suggest you should do it as soon as possible with the board accountancy in your home country. And you should also want to making sure you maintain a valid designation at all times. So as you can see on this slide, the second tips for interview is great English skills, both verbal and written. Great English skill is definitely a strong plus because you need to be really comfortable talking to people, your interviewer, and express yourself clearly in a day-to-day work as well. Try to practice more as you can, making sure you're delivering the correct and appropriate message to the people who are interviewing you. Next, team spirit. If you're a person usually prefers to work alone, you may need to change a little bit. You need to know that Canadian work culture highly values teamwork. It is about raising your hand and speaking up, working cooperatively with others as opposed to working competitively or working on your own. In my example, sharing new knowledge and ideas among colleagues in my firm is very common. At group meetings, try to participate in group discussions as much as possible, even if you only just ask a few basic questions. Contributing your own ideas and thoughts indicate that you wanted to be involved and eager to fit into that organization. So prior to your interview, run a few examples in your head, which can demonstrate that you're a team player in your old company. So this is one of the top questions HR definitely would ask during job interviews. So next, what's the fourth tips here? Be proactive and professional. Using our accounting firms as an illustration, we are usually looking for candidates who are taking control of his or her career. If you're a person oftentimes requires directions and guidance on job, may not suit a fast-paced company where employees are expected to take more initiative and be more proactive. Newcomer came to Canada originally from a more hierarchical culture, may have the inception that you should be totally told exactly what to do and how to do it. You may have the view that the boss should give detailed instructions and you're expected to implement that. And if so, you may give the HR and hiring manager misleading impression during interviews that this candidate lacks self-direction, he or she is not willing to take on more responsibility or challenging work. And it may not be true. So if you are in that category, so you need to making sure you make certain changes. Okay, so what are the nuances here of a Canadian culture at workplace? So imagine that you will have a virtual interview, and what would you expect, especially in this virtual environment? Your behavior in front of a camera is super important and you need to be aware of it. So I have a few on my list. I will just go through one by one. So first, on the day of an online interview, making sure you log into the Zoom meeting 1 or 2 minutes earlier. Do not be the last person to show up in the virtual meeting room. If you have any unexpected delay, you must making sure you phone or email the HR person and in advance so that everyone on the team knows you will be a little bit late. Second, dress for success. Professionalism does beyond your email address. So for virtual meetings, dress as though you are preparing for an in-person interview. Wear your best business attire and also Avoid any overpowering patterns or flashy accessories so as not to divert employers' attention from your expertise. And their focuses should be your personal skills rather than your wardrobe. Next, set up your laptop, check your sound, your webcam, and Zoom background. I would highly suggest not using those default Zoom virtual backgrounds. And if possible, sit in front of a blank background so that you remain the focal point. If your house is void of empty walls, set up in your home office or living rooms, whichever area looks more business-like. Bookcase are really popular background as well because they are colorful and they make you look smart. My personal choice is always a nice painting. Don't feel that you need to empty the space of your personal belongings. If there is some knickknack or two that's showing your personality, it will endear you to your interview because they will feel like they get to know you better. Despite whatever well-intentioned reason they might be chosen for, virtual background inevitably feel like a little bit invasion and of disclosure. It's a disclosure. So fourth, when interview gets started to ask you questions, be an active listener during the meeting. By nodding or taking notes at the appropriate time is important. Listen carefully and attentively and fully understand the message they're trying to deliver. When others are talking, do not interrupt. Ask a question at a later time, and you need to be making sure people seeing you smile from time to time. Especially, this is very powerful in a virtual meeting environment. Last but not least, at the end, when they ask if you have any question to them, and my suggestion to newcomer is that you definitely need to seize this opportunity and lead the rest of the conversation. This is one of the best ways that you can demonstrate who you are and what you care about. Lead the rest of the conversation through which the interviewer will feel closer to you and get to know you better as a real person. Moving on to the next slide. So we know, like before COVID, social distancing, small talks was a daily workplace ritual for most of us. We exchange hellos with colleagues at coffee machine, chat about our weekends while waiting for meetings to begin. Though these encounters probably last only a few minutes, but they play a crucial role in making us feel emotionally connected at work. So what is the new social ritual now in a remote office mode? And I definitely see an encouragement of more small talks. Working from home has blurred the line between people's role on job and their personal lives. And without routine like daily commute to divide them, many people are struggling to shift the gears between the two. Small talks can help people disengage from home role and ease into a business mindset. That's why it's always a good idea to build in time at the start of every meeting for members to greet each other, exchange pleasantries, and ask playful questions. This can also set a positive tone for a virtual meeting. In my firm, we found creative ways to orchestrate informal virtual interactions among people. Some software will help us to organize office visual chat, which pairs up employees who don't already know each other for real-time social interactions. So in this virtual world, it is critically important that each one of us still make the random connections we might find in a shared office space to help with innovation, building networks, and collaboration. That being said, you should be careful not to let a social conversation taking a negative turn. Small talks with coworkers should be really polite, surface level, and focusing on neutral topics. It should never devolve into gossip, especially about a company, other employees, and you should also steer your conversation away from potentially controversial topics like religion, politics, and any romantic relationships. Okay, the next super important thing is to understanding the teamwork culture. Overall speaking, many new immigrants are more hesitant in a new country rather than they were in their home country because they're nervous about their language skills, they stay in the background, and that is possibly why they are sometimes overlooked in the context of a teamwork. Canadian culture, corporate culture, I would say, highly values teamwork. The essential of teamwork are not significantly vary across industry and cultures, but there are some nuances. Building good relationship with colleagues takes time and efforts. And remember, in a virtual world, it means that you need to invest extra time on cultivating this level of relationship. A few specific steps that I think you could take. First, for your first day to that new company, try to remember all the names of the people that you encountered. If you have a poor memory, get yourself a notebook. And now we have smartphones, so it's much easier. Write down every piece of valuable information that you hear and learn about this new worker, co-worker. Try to understand the duties and role of each person and find opportunities to speak with them. Be open to learning at all times. Show your willingness to fit into their team. Choose your most friendly colleague and ask him or her to be your mentor or coach at work. Most of the people definitely are willing to help. So, second, specific. So, what you can do is when you are assigned a new task by your new supervisor, take your initiative. You're encouraged to proactively schedule a kickoff virtual call or meeting with your managers to discuss project details. Do not wait for anyone to reach out to you first. You are supposed to take full responsibility and asking for work and arrange your scheduling on a regular basis. Thirdly, try to make a good impression. How to do that? So when you are starting a new job, work hard on even the most routine task. That's what we expect most of the time. Your manager, your colleagues will notice that you contribute in your patience to help them with even little tiny tasks, and they will really appreciate your help. Also, you should learn to communicate your opinion at workplace in a way that respect other people. Again, it is about respect. So focusing on what you can learn rather than if something goes wrong, who you need to blame. Companies normally encourage their staff to speak up when they disagreed with other people on important ideas, but they should do that in a really polite way. So what does remote work means to you? As governments around the world work to control the spread of COVID-19, companies have activated remote work policies just to balance the employee health and with business as usual. And those policies do more than just promote physical well-being for employees. Remote work allows employees to build their schedule around their personal responsibility and encouraging mental health and a better work-life balance. Some say working at home does increase their focus and allow them to move through their work more quickly. While on the other hand, remote work arrangement may also bring other issues. One of the most obvious one is that you are having almost no face-to-face time with your colleagues. Although most of the technology basics are now in place to enabling them to access work tools remotely, but people highlight a lack of social interactions with people they work with and lack of connections with what was happening in the organization as their biggest challenge with remote work. Nowadays, video calling finally became mainstream in business since 2020, as people looked for ways to replicate in-person meetings away from their office space. So my 8 hours of normal working day is filled up with all kinds of virtual meetings. And if I can't Almost 80% of them are video meetings. So it is obvious like that averagely home working employees in Canada are putting more hours than usual in the past. And it is the same in other countries as well. What do new migrants need to know? And here's a few advice to assist you quickly adapt to the new work normal. First on my list is building trust. In a virtual environment is highly ranked, and how to achieve it? So first, share openly and bring your whole self to work. You don't need to develop your deepest secrets, but in general, the more you share about yourself, the more others will as well. And then this will deepen trust. Stay attuned in conversation you have with others, and you will hear people sharing a little bit more and waiting for your response too. So when you do that, they will share more and more. This is a virtuous loop of trust. A trusting relationship is based on plenty of openness and communication. So bring yourself, true self, into the work. Stay in close proximity, even in a remote work arrangement. When you see people more frequently, even online, you tend to have greater acceptance of them, and you tend to understand them more. It's harder to stay close when you are socially distanced, but make any effort to see people as much as possible through texting them a message, through video conference, Snapchatting, any other ways. So the door to show that the door to a relationship is regularly open to your colleagues. And unplanned connections are still powerful. Plan for those interactions to keep up the frequency of seeing each other online. Be an easy person to read. Another element relating to a human preference for certainty is that we tend to trust those who are easy to read. People don't trust what they don't understand. So be open with your expression and put into words that what you're thinking or feeling. As an example, if you are getting quiet during a virtual meeting and explain that you are struggling with certain idea, or if you go silent on a call, be clear that you've just paused to take a quick note or doing something else. While these may seem unnatural, but actually contribute towards trust because people won't be wondering about your motive, what is your motive, and what draws incorrect, and then draw incorrect conclusions on you. Tip number 2, remain fully aligned with your remote team. Companies are trying to do their best nowadays to keep their employees engaged daily by setting up more regular calls, virtual calls to discuss business plans and also non-work related meetings, such as virtual happy hours. At my company, we meet regularly each Thursday afternoon via Teams. This chat is open to remote and non-remote staff. And it is an open call to talk about whatever is on your minds. Topics have ranged from music preferences to parenting challenges and to what people are doing over the weekend. So as a newcomer, if you join a new firm, I suggest you participate as much as you can and worth investing your time to meet your colleagues in a non-working related meetings. Second, keep people posted. It sounds pretty easy, but you don't want yourself to be invisible. Share your schedule with your managers and ask for advice. Let your direct supervisor know the status of your work on a daily basis. And you can also reach out to your peers to ask them if they need any help so that people know that they can count on you. If you are planning to leave a little bit earlier than usual office hour, you should let your teams know, sending them email, message them, or you can set an out of office alert. And also ask for help. Chat with your colleagues if you are stuck, if you need encouragement or any guidances. Remember that you are not alone, so just give them a call. Third, understanding your company's policy. Companies' remote policy really depends on different companies. So ask your people around you, your HR person, the most concern you have when reading these policies during your first week on board. The policy procedure in place for remote teams are necessary because it defines both you and your employers' expectation of you on certain job. Each company differs, as I said. It really depends on the team size, your business needs, and your structures. So you need to be clear about the flexible work arrangement and when do people expect to see you online. Tip number 3, be productive and collaborative. Have to admit that remote teamwork has its unique challenges. Communication is hard to get right in most workplaces. And when you had a physical distance between team members, the problem is just going to be exaggerated. And unless you deal with it from outset, virtual meetings rely on technology and software tools to communicate and address the resource challenges at outset. To do your jobs effectively remotely, what you need to do is you need to have the right communication technology, like smartphones, stable internet, and a very good resolution webcams. So invest your minimum infrastructures, making sure that you have a reliable source of connections with your team. That's the first and easy step. So speaking about collaboration, how to collaborate with your colleagues in a remote office. You know, like tempers can easily flare amongst any group of people working together. So virtual teams are no different. The best approach to minimize and avoid conflict is to do your best to foster positive relationships with other team members. Talk to your colleagues regularly, not just on work-related matters. It might be appropriate to socialize with your people via email, instant message, in social media to get them to know them. Okay, when people are bonding with each other, they build connections, trust, and they will respect each other. Remember that even though you don't want a conflict within your team, ignoring it when it arises, it isn't an option. The last thing that you wanted to or you need to is that for the situation to linger, sucking up everyone's time and energy and potentially getting worse. So where do you begin? Approach the conflicting situation by talking the matter through with the person. Do this either on a one-on-one basis, or you can talk it through as a group. If you cannot discuss in person as nowadays, making sure you use a phone call instead of emails. When talking to your counterparty, focus on the fix, the solutions, not the personalities and emotions. Practice active listening technique like repeating, paraphrasing to show that you understand and you appreciate the various viewpoints. Conflict in a team setting can often teach you something. Perhaps there is some problem in your work process, or maybe their communication needs need to be clear. Look for root cause and address them. Conflict is a potential reality for any team. But following this approach will help you prevent or minimize it. How to effectively communicate in a virtual culture? Okay, again, just a few 3 key tips here. You just need to over communicate. When we are back in the normal old days, we never emphasize we need to over communicate. But in a remote office workforce, people rely substantially more on written communication, which means They can take advantage of visual cues to understand the intended meaning. As an individual, it is super important that you're fully aware of the company's business plan, your team's goal as a whole, and your own roles and duties. Sometimes this communication would be clearly delivered to you back in the old days. While now everything's online, the way the message delivered to you might be less direct or less clear. So make sure you yourself over communicate your thoughts, your ideas, and your concerns to the supervisor so that you're making sure what you know does align with what they expect on the job. Using video calls instead of just normal calls, seeing the facial expression of your colleagues does create more effective communication and cohesion. Video conferencing has matured to the point where it often feels like as though the person that is in room with you is in the room with you, and that helps to cut down any misunderstanding. So communication, sir, communicate using the right methods at the right time. If you're particularly busy, so it might be tempting to write down a ton of information on what you want to say in an email. Well, however, if a 5-minute call seems more appropriate, then this is probably the channel of communication that you should be using. You should really be smart with how you communicate with the remote colleagues. Email should typically be reserved for simple message, such as setting up a conference meeting or sharing files, while instant message should be for organizing social aspects of a remote team, discussing certain aspects of a project deadline, timeline, casually, or having brief catch up with the employee. So if you have something substantial to say, or it's a topic that is open to discuss, you should definitely use phone call or video calls to organize that conversation. Other than what we just discussed, there are other cultural related matters, like I think definitely need to be shared with the audience today, and including understanding feedback styles. And second, how to navigate career progression conversation with your supervisor. A few key points to emphasize, and also I try to illustrate them on this slide. And in Canada, some of you might already know, like the people that tend to supervise you are trying to suggest what you do instead of just telling you what to do. They will affirm what you did well before suggesting changes, what is not working. Rule number 1, during your first few months in your new job, you are encouraged to solicit feedback from your reporting manager. You need to do that proactively. This can be done either in an informal or formal manner. For new immigrants, here is another rule. Always be open and stay positive to accept constructive criticism. There is always a point where you should stop being defensive and really consider whether the criticism is valid. No one is perfect at all times, and perhaps you are just not seeing what your manager sees. The trick here is that you just need to show that you are willing to listen, but also you need to learn and grow from the criticism. Do not fight, deny, or hide mistakes. Admit them and avoid them next time. Rule number 2, when it comes to evaluate your qualification for promotion, your supervisor may likely judge you in a few areas. Not all companies are the same. Each company has its own culture. So observe intentionally and learn from your coworker who were recently promoted and are highly rated. So ask them for suggestions for your career progression. Then you could set your own achievable goals and revisit them from time to time and schedule regular call with your boss. So how you can get started, initiate a promotion conversation. And again, it depends on corporate culture. As a national public accounting firm, Promotion conversation in my company are usually very open and honest. Your performance manager will assist coachee with their career plan and provide comments along the way so that they want making sure they achieve the goals. Conversation around promotion can be carried on informally as well. It depends how close your relationship is with your coach. So if you aim to promote, say, for the upcoming years, you need to set up the goal clearly on your agenda and raise your concerns and ask for advice from your supervisor and the colleagues. You need to understand how the people around you view your work performance and what are the areas to improve in order to be promoted. In a virtual environment, I highly encourage you to solicit this feedback and initiate this performance discussion with your direct manager on a more regular basis. As a remote worker, you are often left to your own devices to maintain your schedule and achieve your work goals. It is more importantly that you ask for feedback on a more regular basis to ensure that your meetings, your goals are achieving towards the company's expectations. So open conversation, strong communication skills are really important here. So you wanted to be sure that your managers are aware of your goals and where you are working towards. So use your first check-in meeting as a baseline for future meetings with your supervisor. Then request regular monthly or quarterly meetings with him or her, and you prepare a meeting agenda in advance should be really helpful to lead the discussions. So before I'm doing a quick wrap up, I think we've touched so much on many different subjects today, and these are various aspects of the Canadian culture Cuban. So as a closing remark, I wanted to summarize a few key takeaways for today's audience. First, for new immigrants, please get off your comfort zone. And if you wanted to be successful, you must adapt to the new workplace culture here in Canada. Always stay on the company's clock. It's not just about arriving for work on time. It means doing the right thing in an acceptable way. Look for the time patterns in your organization and adapt to it. Build your credibility in order to be positive influences in your team, focusing on growing your soft skills as well as technical skills, showing the right attitude, expanding your network, raising your hands, speak up appropriate times. Some standards and expectations may be written in policy manuals, while others are not. For newcomer professional, often the easiest way is to figure out a particular workplace culture is to observe others and to ask questions. The pandemic, of course, has significantly changed the way we worked. And with that comes the need for new desired skills. Across industries and professionals, we have had to adapt to rapidly changing conditions in response to the crisis. Transferable skills are even more valued than ever in workplace. These are specific set of skills that don't belong to your particular sector, industry, but can be carried with you at all times, irrespective of the job you are doing. On top of my list is, of course, the English skill and communication skills. Being able to communicate well is perhaps one of the most basic skills that you can take with you with any job. In today's workforce, you may be asked to present information to a range of audience. Some of these people may not have an understanding of what you do or share. So the ability to present your ideas with absolute clarity is important. So it is the need to articulate your thoughts in a logical and organized manner. Also, don't forget about collaboration. Again, you're a valuable asset if you can work with peers towards the achievement of common goals. As an effective team player, you're at ease sharing credits, accepting responsibility for your work, and being receptive to ideas and suggestions of your coworker. Your teamwork ability allows you to establish effective communication protocol to avoid mistakes, work duplication, and other big problems. Finally, I just want to say, newcomers, please stay positive. When you feel frustrated with all those integrations, you need to be able to talk through your emotional ups and downs with someone in your family or someone you know in the office. Always wear a smile and have an open, friendly expression in the workplace. Keep practicing and stay positive. All right, that's all from me for today. And I do hope that you have learned something during the last 40, 15